Thank you to Vessi for sponsoring today's video.
Vessis are the perfect shoe for whatever adventure you have planned. Vessis are 100% waterproof, so you can step into those puddles carefree. They will keep your feet dry in the wettest of weather. They're perfect for all seasons, rain or shine. They're made from a dual knit material called Dymatex, which keeps your feet warm in the winter and cool in the summer. They're extremely lightweight, and they don't even feel like they should be waterproof. They're sustainably made with less material waste, less water waste, and no animal byproducts, so they are 100% vegan. The antibacterial insoles keeps things fresh, while the cloud-like cushioning keeps things comfy. The bouncy sole makes them great for outdoor adventures, running errands, or even those long commutes to work. Vessis are also the perfect travel footwear for travel season. Vessis are awesome for our wet, muddy conditions and unpredictable Idaho weather. They're also so easy to keep clean. Vessis have saved my feet from wet, soggy socks on many occasions. Check Vessis out in the link below or use our code RPR to get $25 off your Vessi shoes.
Okay, these two tanks equalized overnight, and we're now at about 50%, although the well is still pumping, so over the next probably day it'll fill up the rest of the way. No leaks, but now it's time to focus on the dirt. And what I need to happen is I need the transition from that little trail that goes to the cabin to be at the same height all the way through here, which will tie into the doorway to the front shed. I'm just trying to find the path of least resistance. If water does get around here, the water needs to have a place to go. So by maintaining grade or progressively lowering it away from the shed will help do that. So that's all I'm doing today in the excavator. As far as the underground water tank shed is concerned, really all that I have left to do is to get the dirt work and the grading figured out around the shed, get a roof built, cover the front of the shed with some siding, probably board and batten siding, shocking, I know, and then get a front door that's weatherproof on the place, and then forget about it. And I shouldn't have to worry about anything associated with the water tanks for a very long time. Up to this point, this project has been just simply a lot of brute strength between the excavator and myself. Getting all of those railroad ties stacked and nailed together with 12-inch spikes didn't require my brain as much as it did my back, and I'm glad that that part is over, but now I need to get the job finished up before the weather changes. Yesterday was one of the hottest days of the year in our neck of the woods. It normally is not anywhere near 100 degrees in the month of September. And soon enough, those temperatures are going to go away, and it's going to be cold. All of this dirt is going to settle right here over the next few years, especially this dirt up against the front of the underground shed. I can only compact this so much, and really all that I'm going to do is put some grass seed all around the underground water tank shed and then let nature do the rest. As the dirt settles, I'll add to it, but the thing that's most important is that I get grade right from the front door out. This is also going to settle here a little bit, and I put enough dirt against the back of this shed to compensate as the dirt settles, but I also compacted this back here very well with the excavator, so it shouldn't settle as much as the front. But I will also put grass seed back here. I'm just about to start framing up the roof that will cover the water tank shed, and I think what I've decided to do is to frame the roof in such a way where if I ever had to remove the roof, I could remove it in one piece with an excavator if I ever needed to remove one of the water tanks. I'm going to build the slope of the roof to go with the slope of the hill. So I'll have to build a dormer or something like that over the front door in case I do need to get access to the water tanks in the middle of the wintertime. But now what I'm hoping to do is to use the excavator to carve out a little bit better parking area for the side-by-sides or the four-wheelers for when we come up here. I am done with the dirt work as far as the excavator is concerned. I may get up here with a rake and a shovel at some point in the near future, but I've compacted this and I want to go work on the new property, cleaning up the trees for the last day that I have the excavator. So the next thing I'm going to do on the shed is get up here and get the roof framed in, and I'll probably put some board and batten siding on it, and then I need to build an insulated front door. So I'm going to go run the excavator for the rest of the day. About 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call from the Kobelco dealership. It's about 45 minutes away from my house that's currently working on my excavator. They've had my excavator for almost 5 months, and they've still yet to diagnose the problem. The problem is the tracks are not switching from high to low, and it first needs to be diagnosed, and then we'll get it fixed. But after 5 months, I have to find somebody else to work on my machine. I understand that everybody's short-handed, but the Kobelco dealership simply continues to make excuses. And I'm not even sure if the problem with the machine is that big of a deal, but they just can't seem to find the time to get the machine diagnosed. So it's very possible I may bring the excavator back here, and I may start the hunt for a good mechanic that can help me get my excavator figured out. It's been a painful summer as far as my excavator is concerned. I thought for sure by now I'd have it up here where I could use it to work on the new property. From the first moment that I cut a tree down on this property, I knew it was going to take a lot of work, but I also knew that I needed to be sensitive to what my wife wanted and to keep the tree thinning to a minimum. So that's what I've tried to do. I've only taken out the trees that are dying or dead, or that may have something wrong with them. And after a few months of working on this land, if all of the brush piles were gone, you almost couldn't tell that a tree's been removed because it's still so thick. There really is a lifetime of work around here that can be done, and having a functional excavator that can be used in these moments is part of the process. I'm technically still looking at excavators for sale, but everything's so crazy right now, I would much rather get my excavator going. Either way, we're getting this property thinned well enough now where we've got to make some decisions on the road and the house officially. If the weather hangs on, I'm going to dig the house pad out and cut that road in for the final time. And then from that point on, it'll be about getting the grass going. Okay, my goal for today is just to kind of continue cleaning up what I cut down a couple of weeks back, pull the stumps out of the ground, and consolidate these piles. I now have too much wood to burn at one time, so I'm going to have to pick probably 2 or 3 different spots to burn the wood once the weather changes. But it makes a huge difference to clean this stuff up, because once it's cleaned up, I can actually see the land, I can see the terrain, I can kind of understand it better. Also, my wife said I need to address why Ruby is so skinny. Ruby's always been a very hyperactive dog. She's always very lean, but as you guys know, over the last couple of years that we've had them, occasionally Bandit and Ruby sneak out together and they run off, and they're usually gone for a few hours and they come back. Every once in a while they'll sneak out and be gone for a day, a half a day, something like that. Somebody would come over, family would come over, friends would come over, and somebody would accidentally open the door and let both dogs out. And the longest the dogs had ever been gone before this was maybe a day. And then last Friday night, I think we had family over, and somehow Bandit and Ruby escaped together, and they just can't help it. They just run like the wind. They play around in the mountains around here, which I don't really have a problem with, assuming they come back in one piece. But every time they have done this, which is about every 3 months, it seems like, it takes a couple of pounds off of Ruby, and so she's always trying to put more weight on. We feed her anything she wants, and she just is always really lean, and she's very picky. That's part of it. But about 2 weeks ago, when Bandit and Ruby escaped, the one difference on that particular night was this crazy thunderstorm came in, and the dogs didn't come back. They didn't come back the next day. The kind of lightning that we had that night, I was really concerned that something bad may have happened to the dogs. Then that next morning, Cedar went on a walk like she always does, and she heard the coyotes making noise. And sometimes that can be an indication that they found either something to scavenge or that they killed something. I wasn't too concerned about the coyotes killing my dogs, but I was concerned that they could have gotten struck by lightning. Anyway, 7 days went by. Both Ruby and Bandit have identification tags on their collars, so we knew that if somebody found them, we would get a phone call. But after a week, after 7 days, we both began to think the worst. And then literally a week to the day later, somebody found Bandit and Ruby. And my son Rhett went and picked him up, and I have video, but I'm not going to show it because she was so skinny after not eating anything for 7 days, I'm assuming, that it was just too much. But she's such an important part of our life, we had to make sure that, number one, that she was going to recover from that, and she's doing much, much better now. She's probably gained probably half the weight that she's lost, and she's still just incredibly skinny. She'll always be that way because she's so active, but we have to get this problem with Bandit and Ruby running away. We have to get it figured out. About a week before this happened, I was on the phone with a somewhat local dog trainer, getting some advice on what to do with Bandit and Ruby. But we've decided to get a couple of tracking collars at a minimum, and then to just start the process of trying to break them of this bad habit, and hopefully this doesn't happen anymore, because it's just heartbreaking when you think you lost your dog and then you see your dog show up. When we got Ruby back, she was probably in a form of shock for about 2 days. She would have bad dreams. I'm assuming whatever happened to her was pretty traumatic, and so I can't have that happening to my dogs. I can't lose any more dogs. I'm not interested in that. But that's why she's skinny, and understand that this dog, we take incredibly good care of this dog, and she is incredibly loved. But we're still human, and we made a mistake, and we allowed the dogs to run off, and so we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen again. It was a rough week after losing Bandit and Ruby, but when we got them back, it was an answer to prayer, to say the least. But Ruby was in pretty rough shape. We've spent the last few days making sure that she's okay and basically giving her all the food that she can eat, so she'll get that weight back on. Ruby is a German short-hair pointer, so she's a bird dog. She's very, very active, and she's very curious, but her nose gets her into more trouble than probably anything else. If she smells just the right smell, she'll be gone for a couple of hours. And as long as she stays fairly close by to the place, I don't have a problem with her running around too much. But before I got Ruby, I had my dog, Ruger. He was about a 3.5-year-old English setter when I got him, but before I got him, he got away from his previous owner, and he was gone for 9 months through the mountains of southeastern Idaho before he would be found nearly 70 miles away. So the process of clearing this brush is basically a process from going to the highest point and throwing everything down and then making a pile and preparing it to be burned at some point in time down the road. I take anything out of it that I can use for firewood, and everything else goes into a pile. To put it into perspective, using the excavator and a chainsaw, since we bought this land, I probably have less than 80-90 hours tied up in the chainsaw and the excavator clearing the land. And I've already probably done just as much as I did with the original land in that first year. It took me over a year to basically get where I'm at right now. So using the excavator is saving us a ton of time, but it's just kind of miserable work. I got to throw everything downhill and try not to hurt any other trees in the process, push it down into a pile, and I think the end result is I'm going to have probably 6 or 7 different piles that are going to burn in a more safer way than if I had one huge pile. But what has now happened is you have the sunlight coming through, which means if I put a 5-seed pasture mix down this fall, I'll have grass come up in the spring. Right now, the only thing that grows up under these trees is the Spanish needle grass, which is invasive. And they have these little needle seeds that embed themselves in the livestock, in the dogs, in the deer, and that's how the seed gets dispersed. But all I have to do is give the ground enough sunlight and some grass seed, and all that invasive stuff goes away. I'm going to keep running the excavator, pushing the piles down to the lowest point, and hopefully I'll finish up today tearing all the stumps out that I've cut down in the last couple of weeks. Ruger was never the same. Whatever happened to that dog during that 9-month period took something out of him. His teeth were all worn down like an old dog, even though he was only a few years old. He moved around like an old dog, and ultimately he didn't live as long as he probably could have. But Ruger was a special dog, and so is Ruby, and the last thing I want to do is to put her in a situation where it could shorten her life. We've got a couple of tracking collars on order for both dogs so that if they do run off again, at least we can keep track of where they're at and hopefully keep both those dogs from ever having to stay the night out in the woods ever again. I'll tell you a story I've never told before on our YouTube channel about my dog Ruger. But one day when I was working on the roof on the main house, about a year before we would move in, it was springtime and Ruger was running around in the hills around our house. And he came off the hill and I could see that he had something in his mouth that was pretty big, but this was normal. Ruger would find bones, he would find deer skin, he would find anything that potentially could be eaten, and he would bring it home with him. But today, this one was a little bit different. When he was about 75 feet away from the house, I told him to go lay down, as he'd been running around for too long, and I realized that what was in his mouth, he left up on the hill as he continued down to the house. I hiked up on the hill to find a day-old baby deer, a little fawn that Ruger had found somewhere out in the woods. I'd like to think that the deer was dead before he brought it home, but I'm just not sure. But from that point on, Ruger was no longer allowed to go running around in the mountains. I had to train him to stay right next to me, and I did this, and he stayed right next to me for the next couple of years. So I've now got to train Ruby to do the same thing, because the last thing I want would be to lose her. I am going to go load up the excavator and get it ready to return first thing in the morning. Then I'm going to go pick up the lumber for the roof on the underground water tank shed and get framing on that. But the next step on the new property here again will simply be to get an excavator again, rent an excavator again when I have some time, and continue to pile up all the brush. And then as soon as the weather changes enough to where we can burn, I'm going to have to burn as much as I can, hopefully before we get too much snow. And then I can still put some grass seed down and still do a few other things. But up here in the corner is where I want to start digging out the pad. So once I get the wood moved around a little bit, I'm going to start digging that pad out as well.